Behind the grand walls of royal palaces, history tells stories of crowns, glory, and power. But there is another story it tried to bury. Some royal children were never crowned, never celebrated, never even seen. Born different, with gentle smiles and innocent hearts, they carried a secret their families feared the world would know. They were hidden away, locked in silence, their names erased to protect the image of a perfect bloodline. Today we break that silence. These are the forgotten royals, the children history chose not to remember, but whose lives mattered just the same. History often tells us stories of powerful kings and queens. We hear about their victories in battles, the lands they ruled, and the glory of their royal crowns. But there are stories that were never told, secrets that stayed locked behind the heavy doors of palaces. Some royal children were born different. They were not the heirs that kings and queens expected. Their small hands, their innocent faces, their gentle smiles did not fit the image of a perfect ruler that the world wanted to see. These children were part of royal families, yet their lives were hidden, their names erased from history. For centuries, having a child with a disability was seen as a curse, a mark of weakness on a family that was supposed to look strong and powerful. Royal families feared that the world would judge them, that their thrones would lose value if people knew their bloodline was not perfect. And so, many of these children never sat at royal feasts, never stood by their parents during grand celebrations. Instead, they were kept far away from the public eye, often living lives of silence and loneliness, forgotten even by their own families. But what made these children so different that they had to be hidden away? Why were their lives considered a danger to royal image and reputation? To understand the pain and injustice they faced, we must first understand what made them unique, and why their difference was feared. Down syndrome is a condition that happens before a baby is born. Every human body is made up of tiny parts called cells, and inside these cells are chromosomes that carry instructions for how we grow. Most people have 46 chromosomes, but someone with Down syndrome has an extra one, making it 47. This small change in the body can affect the way a person looks, learns, and develops. People with Down syndrome may have almond-shaped eyes, a flatter face, smaller ears, and a single crease on their palms. They may also take longer to learn to speak, walk, or do daily activities. Some have health problems like weak muscles or heart conditions. But despite these challenges, they are capable of living full, meaningful, and happy lives. Today, doctors and scientists understand Down syndrome well. There are schools, therapies, and medical help that allow people with this condition to grow, learn, and share their talents with the world. We now know that having an extra chromosome is simply a natural difference, not a sign of weakness or curse. Centuries ago, however, things were very different. People did not understand how or why this condition happened. Many believed it was a punishment from God, a sign of bad bloodlines, or proof that a family was unworthy of power. In royal families, where the birth of a child was not only a private joy but a matter of politics and inheritance, such a difference was terrifying. A disabled heir could mean a future king or queen who could not rule, could not lead armies, or could not continue a dynasty's strength. Back then, science offered no answers. And in a world where every royal birth was a matter of politics and power, any sign of difference was more than just a personal tragedy. It was a threat to the throne. For centuries, royal families were seen as symbols of power, beauty, and perfection. Kings and queens were not just rulers. They were believed to be chosen by God, blessed with strong bloodlines and destined to lead their nations to glory. Every royal child born was expected to carry this image forward, to be healthy, strong, intelligent, and ready to rule one day. The entire future of a kingdom often depended on a single heir. But in a time when medicine and science could not explain birth differences, anything that made a child seem imperfect was feared. A baby born with a disability was often seen as a bad omen, a sign that the family was cursed or had lost divine favor. Rumors could spread quickly, whispering that the royal bloodline was weak or tainted. Enemies could use this to question a king's right to rule or challenge the line of succession. The idea that a future king or queen might not be able to lead armies, make political decisions, or continue the royal name was terrifying to monarchs. Their power depended not just on their armies or wealth, but on public belief that they were destined to rule, almost above ordinary humans. A disabled child threatened that image, not because of who they were, but because of what society expected from royalty. In such a world, love and compassion often clashed with fear and politics. Families faced an impossible choice. Some tried to care for these children quietly, hiding them from public view. Others sent them away to live in institutions or remote places, pretending they had died. Their names were erased from official records, their faces never shown to the world. And so, when royal children were born different, families faced an impossible choice: embrace them in love, or erase them from history. In 1919, Nerissa Bowes-Lyon was born into the extended British royal family. 7 years later, in 1926, her younger sister Catherine followed. They were first cousins to Queen Elizabeth II, part of one of the most powerful families in the world. On the day of their birth, they were expected to live lives filled with privilege, surrounded by luxury and love. But their future took a very different turn. From a young age, it was clear that both sisters had severe intellectual disabilities, and historians believe that one or both may have had Down syndrome or a closely related condition. In a family obsessed with royal image and perfection, this difference was not seen as something to accept. It was seen as a shameful secret to hide. As little girls, Nerissa and Catherine were sent away from the royal household to the Royal Earlswood Hospital in Surrey, a long-term institution for people with disabilities. The decision was final. They would not grow up alongside their cousins in palaces, nor would they join royal events or family photographs. Instead, they were placed in a large, impersonal hospital where they lived far from their relatives. What makes their story even more heartbreaking is that official royal family records falsely listed both sisters as deceased, even though they were very much alive. On paper, it was as if Nerissa had died in 1940 and Catherine in 1961, while in reality they were living quietly behind the walls of Earlswood. For decades, their family rarely visited. They reportedly received very few letters or personal attention from relatives who were busy maintaining their public image. Nerissa remained in the hospital until her death in 1986, and Catherine lived there until 2014, spending almost her entire life hidden away from the world that should have celebrated her as a royal daughter. It was only in the 1980s that journalists discovered the truth. Newspapers revealed that 2 living women, officially recorded as dead, were distant relatives of the Queen. The public reacted with shock and anger, questioning how a family so rich and powerful could abandon their own children simply to protect reputation. The revelation exposed how far monarchies were willing to go to maintain the illusion of a perfect bloodline, even if it meant erasing their own flesh and blood from history. But Britain was not alone in this silence. Across Europe, other royal families faced the same dilemma, and made different choices. Princess Alexandrine of Prussia was born in 1915, the daughter of Crown Prince Wilhelm of Prussia, heir to the German throne. From the moment of her birth, she carried the weight of royal expectations. Her family wanted a strong and capable child who could one day continue the legacy of Prussian leadership. But as Alexandrine grew, it became clear that she was different. She was diagnosed with Down syndrome, though at the time the condition was not well understood or even widely named. Unlike Nerissa and Catherine in Britain, Alexandrine was not sent to an institution. Her parents decided to keep her at home, raising her within the royal household. They loved her deeply in private, protecting her from the cruelty of the outside world as best they could. But this love existed behind closed doors. Alexandrine was not included in royal duties or public appearances that would define a typical life for a princess. There were rare moments when she appeared in family photographs or on commemorative postcards, often surrounded by relatives who adored her. These small glimpses suggested a bond of affection and care that many royal children with disabilities were denied. Yet even in these moments, her life was carefully managed, hidden away from the wider public. Alexandrine would never attend royal ceremonies, never be presented as part of the Prussian image of strength and perfection. Her life was quieter, more sheltered, and perhaps kinder than many others in similar positions. But it was still shaped by stigma. She grew up knowing that her condition made her unfit to be seen as a true royal in the eyes of society. The very family that loved her could not fully show that love to the world, fearing whispers and judgment from those who believed a royal child had to be flawless. Alexandrine lived to adulthood, passing away in 1980. Her story shows that even when a royal family chose compassion over total abandonment, it came with limits. Love had to be hidden, care had to be quiet, and her life remained in the shadows to protect an image built on perfection. Yet even this quiet, shadowed life was a mercy compared to what history suggests happened to countless royal children long before Alexandrine's time. Centuries before Nerissa, Catherine, or Alexandrine were born, the fate of royal children with disabilities was even more tragic and shrouded in silence. In the medieval and early modern eras, the survival of a dynasty depended on producing strong, healthy heirs. A king or queen's power rested not only on armies and alliances but also on the belief that their bloodline was blessed by God. A child born with visible differences or intellectual disabilities did not fit this image. At that time, medicine had no answers, and superstition ruled. Many believed that such children were a punishment for sins, a curse on the family, or even evidence of demonic influence. Some claimed that a disabled heir would bring misfortune to the kingdom, anger the heavens, or weaken a royal claim to divine rule. With so much fear and ignorance surrounding disability, the response was often brutal. Sparse historical records suggest that some royal infants with severe disabilities were quietly killed shortly after birth. Others were abandoned, sent far away to remote estates where they would live in complete obscurity, or handed over to monasteries and convents where they would spend their lives hidden from the world. Their names were rarely recorded, their existence barely acknowledged. Many were never included in family trees, as if they had never been born. Historians can only guess how many royal children suffered this fate. Without official records, most of their stories are lost forever. What remains are whispers in old letters, hints in court documents, and rumors passed down through generations. These fragments tell of lives cut short or lived in secrecy simply because a child did not match the impossible standards of a royal heir. This dark part of history reminds us how fragile a royal child's life could be. A single difference, a weak body, a delayed mind, a face that did not meet expectations, could erase their chance to be loved, to be remembered, or even to survive. The silence surrounding these children was deliberate, designed to protect crowns and thrones, no matter the cost to innocent lives. By the 20th century, science advanced, but secrecy endured. The next story shows how love fought to survive against stigma, even in the modern age. Anne de Gaulle was born in 1928, the youngest daughter of Charles de Gaulle, a man who would later become one of the most powerful figures in French history. Unlike many children of her time who were born with Down syndrome and sent to live in institutions far from their families, Anne's parents chose a different path. They decided to raise her at home, surrounded by love and care, despite the heavy social pressure to hide her away. Anne grew up close to her parents, especially her father. People who knew the family often spoke about the special bond between them. Charles de Gaulle was a serious and disciplined man in public, but with Anne, he was gentle and affectionate. He would spend hours playing with her, talking to her, and making her laugh. In a world where most children with disabilities were treated as burdens or secrets, Anne was cherished openly within the safety of her family home. However, society outside those walls was not as kind. During that time, many people still looked down on disabilities, believing false ideas about weakness, shame, or bad blood. Because of this, Anne rarely appeared in public events. Her condition was not discussed openly, and she was largely shielded from the gaze of strangers who might judge or gossip. Her life was full of love, yet it existed in quiet isolation from the world. Tragically, Anne's life was short. She died at the age of 20 from pneumonia, leaving her parents heartbroken. Her death deeply affected Charles and his wife Yvonne. In her memory, Yvonne founded the Anne de Gaulle Foundation, a hospital dedicated to caring for children with disabilities. This act of kindness gave hope and support to many families who faced the same struggles. Anne's story hinted at change. It showed that even in a time of prejudice and fear, compassion could break through tradition. But for centuries, silence had been the royal response to disability. That silence had its own rules, its own culture. For generations, monarchies built their power on image as much as on politics. A royal family was expected to look strong, pure, and chosen by God to rule. Anything that threatened this image had to be hidden, even if it meant erasing their own children from history. This was the unspoken rule of royal life. Keep up appearances at all costs. Throughout history, many royal families altered official records to hide children born with disabilities. Some were quietly left out of family trees, as if they had never existed. Others were declared dead while still alive, their names only whispers within palace walls. No portraits were painted, no public mentions made. The world never saw their faces, never knew their stories, and never imagined their pain. The case of Nerissa and Catherine Bowes-Lyon in Britain is a modern example of this tradition. They were sent to an institution and officially recorded as dead decades before their real deaths. The lie was meant to protect the royal image, to make the family look untouched by weakness or imperfection. But behind that lie were two women living lonely, forgotten lives, stripped of their place in history and denied the love and acknowledgement they deserved. This culture of silence created generations of hidden children. They were royal by birth, yet treated as invisible. Their lives were not celebrated like their siblings. Instead, they were buried under shame and secrecy, existing in shadows while the world saw only carefully crafted perfection. But time changes even the oldest traditions. Slowly, science, medicine, and compassion began to challenge centuries of secrecy. The 20th century marked a slow but powerful turning point in how society viewed Down syndrome and other disabilities. For centuries, ignorance and fear had shaped the lives of children who were born different. But with the rise of modern science and medicine, old superstitions began to fade. Genetics helped doctors understand that Down syndrome was not a curse, a punishment, or a sign of weakness. It was simply the result of an extra chromosome, a natural part of human diversity. This knowledge replaced centuries of harmful myths that had caused so much pain for families and children alike. With better understanding came better care. Advances in medicine improved life expectancy for children with Down syndrome, helping to treat common health problems such as heart conditions. Early education programs showed that these children could learn, grow, and thrive when given the right support. Therapies were developed to help with speech, movement, and learning, giving families hope where once there had only been fear. Social attitudes also began to change. Slowly, people started to see children with disabilities not as shameful secrets, but as valued members of families and communities. Advocacy groups fought for rights, schools opened doors, and societies began to accept that difference did not mean less. This transformation took decades, and even today, there are battles left to fight. But it marked a clear shift from silence and shame to understanding and inclusion, something past generations of hidden royal children never experienced. Yet remembering how far we've come also reminds us how much was lost, and how fragile progress can be. Today, the world for people with Down syndrome is very different from what it was centuries ago. With the right medical care, education, and family support, they can live long, healthy, and meaningful lives. They go to school, learn skills, work in different professions, build friendships, marry, and even become public figures who inspire others. They are valued for who they are, not judged for what they are not. This reality stands in painful contrast to the past, when children with Down syndrome were often treated as secrets, hidden away to protect a family's reputation. In royal families, this silence was even stronger. A child's life could be erased from records, their name never spoken again, all because they did not match the impossible standard of a perfect heir. Centuries of history were written without them, as if their lives never mattered. Looking back, it is clear how much love and joy the world lost because of fear and ignorance. These children could have lived full lives, surrounded by family, celebrated for their uniqueness. Instead, many were forced into loneliness, kept out of sight, denied the dignity every human deserves. Today's society knows better. We have the knowledge, understanding, and compassion that past generations lacked. But this progress is fragile. We must never return to the time of hidden children. Never let fear or reputation be placed above love and humanity. Perhaps the greatest justice we can offer these forgotten royals is to speak their names aloud, after centuries of forced silence. They were children of kings and queens, born into families with riches, palaces, and power beyond imagination. Yet many of them were denied even the most basic gift of life, a chance to be loved openly, to be seen as they truly were. Royal titles could not protect them from shame or secrecy. Their innocence was hidden away, their names erased from history books, their existence treated as something too dangerous to acknowledge. Nerissa and Catherine spent decades behind hospital walls, declared dead while still breathing. Princess Alexandrine was kept at home yet never allowed to truly belong in the royal image of perfection. Anne de Gaulle was lucky to know her parents' love, but even she lived far from public acceptance. And beyond these few names, there are countless other children we may never know about. Infants buried in silence, forgotten before they had a chance to be remembered. Centuries of history celebrated crowns and thrones, battles and triumphs. But some of its greatest injustices happened quietly, in the shadows of palaces, where children were hidden away because they did not meet impossible expectations. Today we can give them what they were denied: a voice, a place in memory, and the recognition that their lives mattered. We can speak their names, tell their stories, and refuse to let silence win again. Every child deserves to be loved, to be seen, to have their story remembered. No crown, no throne should ever have the power to erase a life.